third video for the week on short-term memory, which is the second component in the Atkinson and Shiffrin model, or the multi-model of memory. So basically information comes from sensory memory, and if you pay attention to it, it comes into short-term memory. This is where all our mental manipulation takes place, so it's a centre of our consciousness, it's our awareness. This is where we do all of our work and thinking, and information comes in from two places, so either sensory memory, if you paid attention to it, or sometimes to enhance our understanding we need to retrieve something from long-term memory. So it's the middle of our memory. It has a very brief duration, so information is only held there for 12 to 30 seconds, and has a very limited capacity as well, 5 to 9 items, or 7 plus or minus 2 items. So 7 minus 2 is 5, 7 plus 2 is 9. Just another way of saying 5 to 9 items. 7 is sometimes referred to as the magic number of short-term memory, and George Miller did a bit of research on this. You don't need to know about his specific research, but just sometimes I might mention his name. When the capacity is reached of short-term memory, this means old information has to move out. So for instance, if your capacity is 9 items, as you remember your 10th item, that means the first item will have been displaced from short-term memory. So where does this information go? Well, it's either forgotten or it moves on to long-term memory if you've done enough work. If you've elaborated on it, thought about enough, and made enough links, it'll move on to long-term memory. In short-term memory, information is no longer in its raw form, so it's not electromagnetic energy, we're talking about light energy, but rather it's moved into the form of electrochemical energy. You'll learn a bit more about that as we learn about the brain and memory. The capacity of short-term memory, even though it's limited, 7 plus or minus 2 items, it can be enhanced through a process called chunking. And chunking is the grouping together of items that can be remembered as a chunk. So instead of one piece of information occupying a space in short-term memory, each chunk of information, which could have several items in it, occupies a space, and this allows more free space. Best example of that is a phone number, so 0438822914. That's remembered as 10 individual units, which actually exceeds our short-term memory capacity. However, if you chunk it and remember it as 0438822914, it now is 3 chunks of information, and that allows more space or frees up extra space in short-term memory. The limited duration can also be improved through a process called maintenance rehearsal. And maintenance rehearsal involves maintaining the information in short-term memory, so keeping it in short-term memory, simply by repeating it over and over again. And you can do this sub-vocally, which means in your head, or you can do it vocally, out loud. So if you were to read a phone number now on a computer screen, and then you had to get out your mobile phone to then actually pop the phone number in, what you'll find is you'll often repeat that phone number over and over again. And that's an example of maintenance rehearsal. Generally, we don't add any extra information to this, so therefore the chances of it moving on to long-term memory are very limited. So it just keeps the information there for a minute or two. The bad thing about maintenance rehearsal is it blocks up short-term memory. So if you've ever had that sensation of trying to remember a phone number, then someone else talks to you, if you turn your attention to them, then you'll most likely lose the phone number. If you don't want to lose the phone number, it probably means you can't turn attention to that new sensory information that's coming in. So it basically stops our short-term memory from working for a period of time. For information to move on to long-term memory from short-term memory, we have to work on it in some way. So we have to elaborate on it or add to it. Memories don't just passively move on, and we'll talk more about long-term memory in the next video. I'll see you shortly.